Hi, my name's Greg Simpson, editor and presenter from Cape Town, here at the Mining Indaba 2015. Just heard from Tony Blair about his thoughts on African mining, the way forward, pros and cons, some really good stuff. Chatting to some more heavy hitters later, top lawyers, top analysts, and some of the good people from Bale Equipment. So stay tuned on Gateway Africa. Alright Gary, so it's good to see you here at the Mining Indaba. How did you get into the mining game?
Jeez, we started originally as just a plant hire company and then progressed into construction, and then we've been involved in a couple of contract mining contracts.
Absolutely.
So, just by chance basically.
Yeah, the lady just all said, mate, you asked for a loan in '95 and that's for a dump truck, and that's how the wheel started spinning.
Yeah, well, you know, I wasn't involved in the '95 World Cup, so I had a bit of time on my hand, and yeah, it's a guy that I studied with, and he was at a loose end, and we just started off by sort of buying one little TLB and reinvested and developed the company from there.
And the keys to growing the business organically, and 20 years in the game is a long time.
Yeah, I think it's basically been around the people that we do have. We've had fantastic people, and I know everyone says that, but I always relate it back to rugby. You know, if you've got one weak link in your back line or in your forwards, it's going to affect the way you perform. And you know, we've been very lucky. My partner was very dynamic, and he was also quite. He quite enjoys taking a bit of risk. So yeah, we've been very fortunate from that time.
And what sort of lessons did you take from your captaincy and imparted into your role as owner?
Well, I think I suppose the biggest thing, you know, it took me some time to understand the business, and I'm still learning all the time. But from a rugby perspective, I think you do learn discipline. I think you need to put in the training hours, and you need to put all that effort off the field and on the field to be successful. And then, you know, I was fortunate to have a proper team around me, both at the Sharks and at the Springboks level, and so we try to create the same environment.
I'm sure you're referring to guys like Mac. Ian McIntosh.
Yeah, Mac was sort of instrumental. You know, he just showed me the passion that you need to be successful. So it's the same in business. You've got to have that passion. I had great players like Andre Joubert, Henry Honeyball, John Allen, Mark Andrews, and all those guys. And I'm currently in business with Adrian Garvey. So you know, it's trying to create that little environment that we learned through Mac and through rugby.
Yeah, I hear Garvey's partnering up with you in the last 2 years.
Yeah, last 3 years ago we started. We ended up with a drilling contract, exploration drilling, and at the same time he came to me and he had sort of got tired of coaching kids and he wanted to find something new. So I said, well, you know, Adrian, go spend some time in Zambia and learn the business, and he's made it work. He's been phenomenal. You know. From knowing nothing, he puts a lot of hard work, and you know, he's also starting to put good people around him. And you don't have to be an expert in the business to make it successful, as long as you have that sort of backup.
And what's the biggest lesson you've learned in the last 20 years, and the key opportunities you see in Africa as you expand your business?
Yeah, I think you know, we took a view probably 10 years ago to go into Africa. We've always had a philosophy that we're going to run good quality equipment, so we were never going to compete in and around town. We needed to be out in the rural areas, so the next step was moving into Africa, and it was a good timing because a lot of the construction guys came back. You know, the 2010 World Cup, everyone was working here, so it gave us that opportunity, and we've sort of created a nice footprint around Africa. And you know, the lessons learnt is to, if I could identify good people just in one interview, then you've got a skill that a lot of people don't have, and it's something that I've really learnt, that you've got to really put the effort into trying to attract those good people and do the homework about employing good people.
Absolutely. And finally, Springbok Rugby, are you happy with where it's at the moment?
Yeah, just chatting early on, I think, you know, there's so much rugby in between now and the World Cup, you worry about injuries. So I think to say that we've got all the players at our disposal now is a bit early. I think if we do have a good run of with no injuries, then I think we've got the players, and you know, Heineke just needs to pick the right combinations. And I think he's got to stick to the way he wants to play, and then I think we've got as good a chance as any.
You're one of the smartest players in the game. Do you think sometimes we overlook smartness for just sheer size?
You know, I've been out of the game for so long. The game has changed dramatically. You know, I went to the UCT Marty's game on Monday, and those boys were massive, and they're putting in big hits. So I think rugby as a whole has to look at the rules, because it's become very much a power game, and you know, a lot of the selection is done on stats. You know, you're weighing this, you're doing this sort of push-ups and this sort of bench press, and I think they need to look at the rules and how they can get it back to that. You know, it's not often that you have a turnaround and opportunity that guys aren't expecting. So to allow the game to still have a little scrum half and you know, a very fast wing, instead of just being too powerful. But I think the rules have to accommodate that.
Absolutely. And finally, thoughts of the Indaba this year? You're getting good exposure here?
Yeah, it's very good. Like I said, we've been here 3 years. I think the market, everyone's a bit down at the moment, you know, with the commodity prices. But you know, for me to be here and to bump into clients that you don't necessarily see because of the location and where the guys are operating, it's a good opportunity to meet with them.
I presume you bring your own energy with the sort of the remote locations you guys are drilling in.
Yeah, I think you know, we're fortunate that we're on some good mines, and a lot of the supply comes from them. So you know, we're in a good space at the moment.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for your time, Gary.
Thank you.
All the best. Good vibe at the Mining Indaba, depending on who you speak to. What do you see as the key talking points to come out of 2015?
The key points, probably last year, there was some criticism of the minister's speech. The primary criticism being that she was possibly painting a rosy picture when she shouldn't have been, and not addressing the challenges. This year, obviously, the minister has taken a very different view, and although he didn't address them necessarily as head-on as we would have liked, he dealt with the challenges and ended off on a very positive note.
And for people that didn't hear the speech, can you outline some of the challenges that were put forward?
There's obviously a difference between the written speech which he had and then the points that he raised. But obviously the points that he raised generally were very good. Unemployment, inequality, and very importantly reconfirming that the mining industry is still one of the primary mechanisms of addressing poverty and inequality in the South African context.
And there seems to be good sentiment for north of the border. Can you compare that to the sentiment within South Africa?
Very, again, depending on who you speak to, but the general consensus is South Africa very flat, no immediate prospects, but north of our borders, open-ended opportunity.
What's going to give the South African industry a kick up the backside to get it moving again?
Well, foreign direct investment down. Again, a couple of monitors that have gone out today, 2.6% down. Those are the kicks in the pants that we're going to be seeing, and I think that's a good thing.
And last year, beneficiation was the big buzzword. How much of that was just talk, and how much has actually been put into action?
A lot of it has been put into action. Beneficiation is based predominantly on infrastructure. So the development plans, once the infrastructure has been agreed to put in place, money spent, beneficiation will follow. So no, it wasn't simply a commitment in words, it's been put into action.
That's good to hear. And compliance has been the big talking point that you've been putting forward in the last 12 months. Some legislation on the table. Where do you think we're going with all that?
Compliance still a significant area of concern. And even, for example, the fact that the fatalities were lower in 2014 doesn't mean that there's compliance. There's still a lot of work to be done. But it's an important aspect, but one of the most important aspects at the moment, environmental compliance. Big talk topic this year. Environmental compliance is going to continue to be a key issue going forward, and high-profile prosecutions being spoken about. regulatory intervention, big teams going out to operations. We're probably going to see more of that this year.
So we're going to see some more high-profile court cases, presumably in the next 12 months, with hopefully some jail time to actually enforce these laws.
Well, it's difficult for me to talk about jail time. I defend most of the mining managers, so very difficult to talk about jail time. Is enforcement required? Yes. Most mining companies are committed, they do what they can, but unfortunately there are mining companies that don't. And in those circumstances, it's a name and shame scenario, and that is probably going to be a good thing for the industry.
Absolutely, and yesterday's Digby Wells launch, mine closures was a big topic of discussion. How many mines are actually planning for the future and not just planning for profits?
Yeah. The sustainability issue is quite interesting at the moment, and one of the aspects which I don't think has been dealt with sufficiently is the regional impacts, both positive and negative. In other words, when you're looking at sustainability, if you can get economies of scale, mining companies that go it alone aren't going to be able to achieve what they hope to achieve. They simply don't have the capacity or the funding. So regional approaches, cooperation between companies is absolutely necessary, but also there's a negative component. If you look at the figures, it seems like about 90 to 95 companies closed down in the Rustenburg region as a result of the strike and never came back. Couldn't resuscitate it, they went out of business. And that's a regional impact which I don't think that the mining companies are necessarily looking at enough. So sustainability on a regional basis, huge aspect, something which requires attention this year.
And you touched on a moot point, unions. I mean, what is really the future of unions as we become more and more mechanized?
The unions are here to stay. They will be around. There's a place for trade unions. Many of the trade unions are very mature about how they approach things, and it's a power play at the moment. It's going to play itself out whether we like it or not, and whether you've got an operator on a machine or a person with a shovel at a conveyor belt. It's going to play itself out. The trade unions are going to be here for a long time. They have been, they will be. It has to play its way out.
I guess it just has to evolve.
It has to evolve, and it will get to a point where there's stability.
And you're talking power plays, electricity seems to be one of the major talking points.
Yes.
Can you map the way forward of how we're going to dig ourselves out of this thing?
Literally.
Without using too much coal?
Without. The coal side, our energy source is still 95% from coal.
Yeah.
So coal is an absolutely critical mineral. The process of extracting, selling, the balance between offshore and domestic use. So it's still another big topic for this year. Electricity, if you look at the challenges, it's probably our biggest challenge right now with the mining industry. It's not a tap. You can't turn it on and off. Your beneficiation, which you mentioned earlier, is dependent on a solid, sustainable supply of energy, and until that happens, we're going to have difficulties. That's why the mining companies are looking at self-supplying, and I think it's going to generate a whole new industry alongside the mining.
That's a very good point. So companies must actually take responsibility for themselves for power generation, not rely on government as the sole supplier.
Correct, and I think that's where most mining companies are looking at. It's expensive, it's a huge capital investment, but when you look at what is lost every single day with a power cut, it makes sense in the long term.
So when you're advising clients north of the border, you tell them take your own gennies, do it all yourself?
Yes, so a combination of gen sets, clean energy, solar, etc. And I mean, our solar projects are going incredibly well, and that's what we're going to have to look at going forward.
And nuclear, talks of 8 nuclear power stations, not really realistic. I mean, where do you stand on the nuclear debate?
Nuclear is obviously controversial, very, very controversial. It has an emotional connotation. You know, every time you put on the TV and you see a nuclear leak or a reactor going up, very, very emotional. So it's like fracking. You have to get over the emotional aspect. Is it a long-term sustainable source of energy? No, it's also dirty energy, and hence the focus on renewables.
Fracking, is that a long-term sustainable form of energy?
It's a good short to medium source of energy.
And if they do find, that would obviously be a game changer for Southern Africa.
Yes, most definitely. It would be if any viable pockets or sources are found. It's a good source of energy for a long time to come.
Skills development. Do you think companies are doing enough to create a stream of? There's no real entrepreneurial programs anymore. I mean, where's the next wave of highly skilled people going to come from?
If we don't attend to the skills deficit or the skills gap, relevant skills, it's not going to happen. So money's got to come from somewhere. The mining industry's bursary funds, skills development programs, absolutely critical. But I certainly agree with the comments that it has to be relevant. I probably be criticised for this comment, but in many instances you see skills that are unrelated to the business, unrelated to that person's skill set, but they get a certificate on the wall, and that's simply not sustainable going forward. We need the engineers, you need the artisans, you need the operators.
And once they are trained, how can we retain their skills better?
The retention of skills is a completely different question. It's a merry-go-round. People move R4 more per month. It's quality of working conditions, quality of the employer, wanting to go to work in the mornings, feeling good about the employer, and that needs to be worked on. Sending around a meal trolley and things like that, it seems to be nothing, but it makes a difference, and people feel more comfortable. Simple things like that.
Do you think we've seen the worst of the strike action?
Probably not. Will we have something as sustained as we had in the platinum side? Possibly not, because the minister's been very vocal about not allowing that again. But unfortunately, in January, we've seen many wildcat strikes already, and 2 very high-profile wildcat strikes involving Namanamku. That's not going to stop in the first. Certainly, I don't see it stopping in the first half of this year.
I was reading that the unions are fighting amongst themselves now. So, strong leadership is needed there.
Very strong leadership. There are very good, mature leaders within the unions. It's a question of politics at the moment, and a question of making sure that you're there and you're looking after your position and looking after your constituency. And as a result of that, very few leaders are taking a position where they can be exposed.
And South Africa is still one of the top 5 in terms of mineral resources, but not in terms of profitability. How can we take that step from having a great cricket team to winning the World Cup, if you will?
Yeah. Again, I think that Chris Griffith's talk probably gave direction to many people. It's mechanisation and automation. It's the only way that you can have that and turn that profit curve around. Our labour is incredibly expensive. Our mines are deeper. They're old-style mining. More capex is required. So unfortunately, it's mechanisation, automation.
And how suitable are 3 to 4K shafts to mechanisation, really deep stuff?
Well, obviously the older mines it's very difficult. When you go to an old drill and blast style extractive method versus board and pillar extractive method, the old mines are problematic. So it's easier to design new mines around that, or to deal with mines that are not that old. So probably 5 to 10-year-old mines can convert, but the older mines simply very difficult and probably not possible.
And now we're seeing the University of Pretoria introducing virtual reality. How can technology streamline things for us going forward? The
technology and the 3D mapping of the work environments, simulation, absolutely critical. Remember, some of these operators, you're operating a vehicle of 30, 40 tons that can take a 90-ton payload, and you put a person into the driver's seat in that kind of equipment, and that person doesn't have a road license to drive a car on a road. So that whole conversion and the 3D simulations absolutely critical to train people physically in the environment.
And a lot of talk about Congo. Are there any other neighbouring countries, sub-Saharan Africa, that we should keep our eye on in the next 12 months?
The hotspots, obviously, Nigeria is still very, very good. Namibia seems to be picking up again. West Africa will, as soon as everybody gets over the security and health concerns. So West Africa, absolutely still important. DRC is problematic at the moment because they've bypassed the industry and taken the new code directly, and that is creating uncertainty in the DRC at the moment. So very up and down. And I would say Nigeria and probably West Africa in due course as soon as the scares are over.
Uncertainty seems to be the major handbrake of growth in Africa. I mean, when are we going to get past that and actually have a more stable working environment?
It's obviously not just the working environment, it's the regulatory environment, it's the infrastructure environment, and then the employment environment. With the South African New Way Forward, the development plan, the African Union's vision, there's commitment and there seems to be money flowing. Once the infrastructure has been approved and in place, we'll see tremendous growth.
Government's been making some noises about pseudo-nationalisation. I mean, how can we decipher the noise from the actual reality?
Nationalisation obviously was a buzzword for a while. and that's now changed to nationalism as opposed to nationalisation. And that seems to have got people's emotions down a bit. So it's taken the temperature off by calling it nationalism, where it effectively belongs to the nation. The difficulty is how it's going to be achieved. We've all seen the responses to the previous draft of the MPRDA amendments, and the spectre of taking 20 or 30 or 40%. I think the way that it's being looked at the moment is probably better. So through the state-owned mining companies, it's the right way of dealing with the nationalism component. Set up, as the Minister indicated, the new champion, set up the companies and deal with it through that mechanism.
And commodity price has been a little bit iffy. Where do you see that going in the next 12 months?
Commodity prices not great at the moment. Everything is down in some form or another, particularly on the coal side. If you look at that, iron ore, not a good outlook for 2015 at all. Probably nothing for the first half of this year. And if there's any improvement, it's going to be later in the year.
And where do you see the little shining lights appearing in the whole spectrum of things?
Well, it's not gold, it's not platinum. It's going to remain probably coal and the rare earths.
How do we maximize our coal fields? We've got massive reserves still.
Well, our reserves are probably another 100 years worth of reserves. I think it's 66 billion tons or something that's still in the ground. And the Waterberg and everything that has been, the infrastructure around the Waterberg, that's the focal point at the moment.
So can you tell us a bit about yourself, sir, and how you fit into the Cummins family?
Okay, my name is Alok Joshi, and I'm responsible for the power generation business for Africa. And I'm based in Johannesburg. For Cummins, Africa is starting right up from Libya, Algeria, all the way down to South Africa. So I'm responsible for the power generation business for Cummins for all of Africa.
Absolutely, and power is very much in the news. Can you talk about some of your power solutions that could help our shortages?
Yes, so I think what South Africa is going through is a crisis where, there's a lot of demand and the supply is not there, as well as a situation where I think the infrastructure is getting old. So you have a situation where the reliability of the grid is not that great. So what Cummins can do is, help businesses with their power needs. So we have generators starting from 10 kilowatt, which we can use in your house, right up to 3.5 megawatt, which is good to power small, industry or a big building or something of that sort. So we have solutions which can range from 10 megawatts to 3,500, 10 kilowatts to 3,500 kilowatts. And we have it in different fuels as well. So we have diesel, which is very widely available, and then we also do gas. And gas is quite interesting proposition from a operating cost perspective.
And can you talk about the different types of gas we're dealing with and the pros and cons?
Yes, we can do gas, pipeline gas is one, we can do propane, we can do digester. So different types of gases is something that we can burn and generate electricity. And it depends, for example, in Kenya, we are doing a project where we are burning wood. It's a parasite which grows in certain parts of Kenya. And we are working on, burning that wood to create gas, and that's going to power up to 10 megawatts. That will get fed into the grid. So we do all these different types of solutions. We can do with waste. So all the waste that is accumulated, you burn it and use that gas to generate electricity.
Can you talk about some of the R&D that goes into these sort of products?
Yeah, so I think we have one of the products over here on display, which is a 95-liter engine, which will probably be 3 times the size of, 2 times at least the size of this one. This is a 50-liter and that is a 95-liter.
How many kilowatts will you get out?
That will do a 3.5 megawatts, so 3,500 kilowatts. And we launched that product last year. And it generates, it has the most optimal sort of lowest operating cost that we have. So we've invested $1 billion plus in that particular engine. And the first rollout will happen for PowerGen, and then we will roll it out for other applications. So from a Cummins perspective, we want to be at the leading, forefront of technology. So if you look at most of our products, in Europe, we were the first to come up with stage 3A products when the market didn't really need it. In India, we have the CPCB2 compliant products. And if you take in the US, we have Tier 4 final, Tier 4 interim, all emission level products which are dictated by the legislative bodies in different areas. So Cummins has always been in the forefront of coming up with products that not just meet the global emission standards, but when it comes to gensets, we make the quietest product, the smallest footprint. So there are a lot of other metrics that we focus on when we develop our products.
And LNG, obviously something you're looking at?
LNG, so the way it works is the products work on gas. So even if you move CNG or LNG, we'll have to have a system where it gets converted, the liquid fuel gets converted into gas. But that is one of the things that we're going to talk about in Mining Indaba, because we feel that gas could provide remote, a solution for, distributed generation. And if you've got a mine which is maybe 100 kilometers away from the grid or from the coast where the gas is available, you can truck gas in a compressed format or a liquid format and generate electricity at site.
And your views on shale gas and the exploration therein?
The exploration of shale gas will depend on the economics, and especially with oil prices going so low, the investment in shale will become more challenging. If you're talking about oil at $45 a barrel, it will be very difficult for shale to be viable in all areas of the world. So I think the point is, if the gas prices and the oil prices go up, shale will be definitely a very interesting option for exploration and investment. But at the current level, I think it will be a bit challenging. But it also depends on the geopolitical situation with many countries. If they want to be self-sufficient from an oil perspective, a lot of American oil comes from shale and the imports have declined over time. So it also depends on the geopolitical situation. But the prices at which the oil is today, I think it will become more challenging to invest in shale in at least some areas where it is very difficult to extract.
And the uptake of gas in the maritime sector?
In the maritime?
It's becoming more popular?
Yes. Gas we feel is the future. There is a lot of reliance on diesel now, and gas gets flared in many markets because it's very difficult to tap that and distribute it. I think that's the big issue with gas in Africa. Angola has a lot of reserves, Mozambique has a lot of reserves, Tanzania has a lot of reserves, Algeria has a lot of reserves. The point is, how do you distribute that gas? And even if you look at our in the small automotive sector, a lot of products have moved from diesel to CNG or some form of gas. And I think we feel that's the future. And that's the reason why, the new 3.5 megawatt that we invested, that is going to have a gas variant, and we are going to release it in the next couple of years. But if you look at the cost of operating a product on gas, it's much more economical than diesel.
And to put it in practical terms, what size mine would that 3.5 megawatt satisfy?
So a typical mining installation depends on the size of the mine, but what we've seen is you might have a mine typically around between 25 to 40 megawatt each site. And we can have multiple, say 10 units of the 3.5 megawatt or 8 units of the 3.5 megawatt to cater to a mine site. There are two ways to look at it. If you have a serious problem with electricity, then that becomes the main source of power. The other way to look at it is when you have a shortage of electricity and the grid is not supplying electricity, then you would get into a situation where this, it is either a backup or it's a prime, source of supply. One of the things, for example, that we do in Nigeria is we sell electricity to end customers because one, the grid is very unreliable, and the cost of generation that we do from gas is more cost effective than the total cost of running.
My next question is gas almost becoming more cost effective than other forms?
Yes, so it depends on the country. So if you look at if there is a difference in the pricing, a huge difference between the pricing between gas and diesel, gas will always be the best option to generate electricity. But you would have countries where there's not much of the spark spread, between diesel and gas. Countries like Algeria or Saudi Arabia, where the price differential is not that high. But if you look at Nigeria, there's a huge difference between the gas prices and the diesel prices. that's where the gas becomes quite interesting to operate. But overall, it's also a question of what is the cost of getting diesel to a form where you can use it, crude to diesel and gas. And the simple math would say that if you have gas, it will always be much more economical to run a power plant.
And have you seen the filtration side of your business grow over the last 5 to 10 years?
Yes, specifically in Africa, because the quality of fuel that you get in Africa, it varies from country to country, and there's a lot of need for filtration to ensure that the right quality of diesel goes into the engine. If you look at this particular engine, this operates on a common rail fuel system. So if you have fuel contaminated, it will really cause a lot of problems for either the mine site or the equipment, or if you're generating power, it will have that problem. So I think the important aspect of getting a better compliant and low emissions product is to ensure that what you feed into the engine is equally clean.
So is that a problem you have in Africa with low PPMs?
Yes, so if you look at Europe and the US, most of the products are very low, ultra low emission levels. You're talking about stage 5 or Euro 6 and those kind of levels where the air that comes out of the exhaust is very, very clean. So in Africa there are no emission legislative requirements at this point of time, but we feel in future it will come.
How many years we're looking at for that kind of legislation?
There is no pan-African body for emissions. I think that is one way to look at it. But if you look at a country level, there is not a huge drive for emissions at the moment, but it's going to come, and it will not just come for on-highway applications, but it will also come for other industrial applications as well.
How far away are we from quality biodiesel that can be used industrially?
So many of our products are compliant to B20 and to that level. I think there's a debate about if biodiesel is the right way to go about it, because what we have seen is the price of food is going up in the market. So the question is, do you use a lower price? Do you want an optimal price for food, or do you want to have 20 or 30 or 40% of your diesel to be with some bio content? So I think that is the big challenge today, and I don't think that biodiesel has actually picked up that much. When it started, it was a big thing, but now a lot of people realize when you have a food distribution and food security issue in the world, that may not be the best solution. But of course, we have made our products compliant, many of our products compliant to some level of biodiesel.
What are your impressions of the Indaba this year?
This is my first time over here, and I've come from the UK, and now I'm heading up the Africa business over here. But what I see is there is more talk about here for electricity and power in comparison to mining, so which is a great thing for us, because everybody needs electricity to run a mine. And the reason why we've also come over here is we want to showcase that we have engines for all application, not just power generation, but mining, construction, and marine, and all type of various applications. But if you per se take mining, we do very well because we have great partners in mining, and we are one of the very few people who can give you a complete energy solution for a mining outfit. So that's the reason why we are here, and so far it's looking very promising.
So can you tell me a bit about yourself and your role at the company, and how sort of plans for IBM the next year or two?
So my name is Dirk Lassens. I'm globally responsible for IBM's metals and mining business based out of Antwerp. Our plans are, as IBM is giving analytics as one of our primary strategic priorities, is to make this of value to the industry of mining. And that's why we're here.
And specifically, how can analytics help a company save time and money and health and safety?
The way I always say is that the industry, the mining industry, has got a high risk profile. because of the fact it's high capital intensive, the fact it's dealing with commodity markets, it's got a health and safety high risk profile and so on. So the way we bring analytics in is it adds predictability to what's going on, and that mitigates risk by definition. So a couple of examples. For instance, in asset management, you can do on predictive maintenance, and we provide a solution suite there, predicting equipment to fail before it actually happens. On production level, we can predict quality based on production parameters before the product actually reaches the final inventory. Health and safety, we have a solution that's called Guardian Angel that equips people with various metering objects on the body, connected to a mobile application. If somebody falls over, people around those people are notified on their mobile phone. They can go there and help out, and so on. So there's various applications we can provide.
And can you put a dollar and cents figure on the sort of savings that companies would enjoy by utilizing this technology?
I'll give you one example. This is an example we had with recently finished a pilot project with a platinum producer here in South Africa. What we did was, together with our business partners of MineRP, they're mining technical system providers, we provided analytics on top of that. What we provided was the optimization of a shaft in one of their mining operations. So the mining plan would come from MineRP, and we then optimize that mine plan to give an optimal schedule that then feeds back into the plan and kind of dynamically changes as things carry on.
Absolutely. And
the dollar value?
Dollar value, percentage-wise, saving to business?
So the percentage, the saving was an addition of 5 to 10% on the NPV over the next 3 years. In dollars or in rand, excuse me, in rand, it was around 120 million rand per annum.
And your key customer base in South Africa, and who's been really utilizing the technology?
We're dealing with most of the big mining houses. So you can name whether it's Anglo, whether it's Impala, whether it's BHP, I mean, all of them who are present, we're dealing with.
And what did you say is a key differentiating factor between you and your competition in a very tight market?
Key differentiator is that we are independent of the equipment that's being utilized. So we've got open integration technology that takes data from anywhere it's being provided. I would also say the key differentiator is the fact that we have research dedicated to the mining industry. So the analytics we provide and the optimization tools and solutions are very advanced. So again, to the example of the platinum miner here in South Africa, it's 185,000 tasks that need to be scheduled optimally over 3 years. That is really heavy-duty math sciences optimization, and we feel very strongly equipped to do that kind of work. So it's a combination of open technology, new technology, plus dedicated research to the mining industry.
And the usability of the software for the man on the ground?
What we try to do in a number of occasions is to provide mobile devices. We're working together with Apple. We've got an alliance with Apple, which we announced 3 or 4 months ago. Like the Guardian Angel app I just spoke about for health and safety is an Apple app. So it's as simple as it humanly can be. So it's an interface you used to work with when you're using your smartphone. And so that's the way we want to work for the man on the ground. As
and the idea of partnering up with Apple specifically?
The idea?
Why Apple specifically to partner with?
For the reason we were just describing, in terms of usability and consumability, they're the leaders in the market. So to provide mobile user interface that is easy to use and very intuitive, they can, we cannot. So they're the leaders in that. And as we experienced the last 3 months, 4 months when the first apps came on the market, you know, it's very powerful.
And can you conceptualize what the mine of 2035 might look like if technology at its way?
The mine of 2035.
Yeah.
I would expect us to reach a level of automation that's way beyond what we've got now. I would expect us to have data flowing through that automated operation in a way that we can continuously improve the efficiency and the productivity of the equipment. And I would expect us to use cognitive systems that understand and interpret all the data coming through, and in a learning mode, improving the operation as it goes along. So very much more independent from human interaction.
And how would you how would you guide your customers to make use of the data? Because there must be a lot of data coming in. How best to make use of that for your company?
That's a good question. In a mining environment specifically that is very complex, you would have more than 300 mining technical systems on an asset level. It makes no sense to replace them all, leave them where they are, but use state-of-the-art integration technology that amalgamates all that information coming through and presents it in a very usable way, in a standard way, in a database format everybody can work with, because then you easily bridge all that information coming from mining technical systems into an enterprise level, where you then can start fulfilling your demand, auditing what's going on in the mine, and so on and so on.
And how well does this translate into virtual reality, which is the new buzzword in mine technology?
Virtual reality, I would say, is the game more of the equipment providers and suppliers into the mining industry. They've come a long way working together with Joy Global, for instance. I know they're very advanced in that. It's not really our game. What we do is we do have some gaming technology we deploy for training purposes. We have a couple of cases there, but not in mining yet. It's really virtual reality, that kind of stuff. We leave it to the equipment providers.
And with African mining, it's a lot of fresh opportunities. Where do you see key growth areas for your business?
On the analytics, as we just described, I really think there's huge opportunity there. I feel that the African mining market, well, it's kind of valid for mining all around, but recent history has proven that with big shifts in demand, big shifts in environment, it's very difficult to respond to those shifts. So there's a lack of agility to the way the market changes. I would say from a macro kind of mindset perspective, that is what needs to happen now to fix that problem. The way you fix that problem is what we just described. So you amalgamate your data on a mining asset level, you present it on an enterprise level, you will fulfill demand and respond to demand as it changes, and that is the direction they should take.
And what could South African mining learn from the way the European industries approach mining in a more professional manner?
I would say, if you look at just one example, if you look at Boliden, that's a Swedish copper miner. They are by far the most productive and efficient copper miner in the world. But they've done that because they had to. Their labor cost is higher than anywhere else. So their cost per ton of copper is lower than anywhere else regardless. So out of necessity, they have been working on structural productivity improvement almost for as long as they exist. So if you could go there and see how they do their operation, how far they've gone in autonomous mining, in mobile devices, in using technology to improve efficiency, it's a big example. Structural productivity environment initiatives, projects, apply them across the board, and what I just explained, always with agility in mind, always with demand alignment in mind.
Absolutely. And can you put a number on when we might see 80% mechanization across the board in mining?
Oof, that's a tough one, because it's not really a question to me alone. A lot of our colleagues here in the Indaba would be able to answer that question. I'm not going to put the number on that. I really don't know. I have no view on that.
Any solutions to our energy crisis?
Well, the energy crisis is an interesting one, because again, the steel industry has been asking for our analytic solution in energy optimization. So if you look at, and sometimes it's much simpler than you think it is, right? If you look at all the automation data that come through on a plant level, if you look at the energy consumption, if you look at utility sources, energy sources, and energy consumption, and you align that with the schedule of your operation, you will be surprised how much energy efficiency you can apply just by working with the data you are getting. I'm not talking about big and massive infrastructure changes. I'm just talking about look at your data, synchronize production schedules with energy schedules. Because often energy is used as an unconstrained resource. It's not, of course. There's a price tag to it. So align the two, and you would be surprised how much energy you can save.
Absolutely. Thanks for your time, sir.
My pleasure.
It's a big problem, and I think definitely today I would advise any company to pay a lot of attention to the broader social responsibility and to what happens in the community. But governments also got to facilitate that and facilitate it realistically. Companies come in, they make an investment, to make a profit for their shareholders. But I mean, the advice I would give is pretty obvious advice, which is, you're going into the community, you're going to be there for a significant period of time. Try and help the development of the community as much as possible. but you do need an echo from government. And you also need, you know, people to realize that over time, industries change and communities change. I mean, you actually mentioned, Kristen, my seat was a mining seat. But actually, when I became Member of Parliament, at that point, all the mines had closed. And, you know, it's a very interesting thing about the process of change, because I'm always fascinated about how people make change work. And it's the most difficult thing, I think, in politics or business. But, you know, we had a huge debate in the 1980s about what to do about the mining industry, because obviously it was starting to employ fewer people. And the Japanese, in the form of Nissan car company, at the time, came and asked to set up a car manufacturing plant in the northeast of the UK, just outside my constituency. And there was a huge debate about this, because many people from the older generation and even the younger generation said, what do we want the Japanese coming here for? They're going to, you know, remember that in the 1980s it was the Japanese miracle, they're going to take over the country and so on and so forth. And I'll never forget, it was one of my first political meetings, was a meeting in the town hall at Durham, where there was a heated debate about whether Nissan should be allowed to build this car plant. And the room was finally swayed by an old leader of the council, but who had been an official in the 1926 miners' strike. And he got up and said, look, I've lived all my life in this area. I spent 30 years down the mines, but I'm telling you, we've got to look for a different future. And if these Japanese people can come in and they can provide work, we should do it. And so in the end, Nissan built this car plant there. It's now one of the most successful in Europe. It actually helped transform the UK car industry. Now, my point is this, that with local communities, you know, the mining community will be immensely important, but they're also going to have to undergo change over time. You want to be trying to diversify the local economy. And, you know, that's where government has to employ sensible policies as well. So I don't think, you know, it's not a one-way street. This is why I say I think the best thing today is to look upon a mining investment. It's not simply a transaction, but the building of a relationship.
If we can now speak about ISIS. At what stage do the people in this room have to take account of ISIS in their strategic plan? How big is ISIS?
In Africa, there are various elements that may associate with ISIS. The issue of extremism based on the virtue of Islam, this radical Islamism, I think this is a big, big challenge for Africa. You can see it in Nigeria, you see it in Kenya, you see it right across the belt of Central Africa and elsewhere. And, you know, this is probably something we're not going to better get into in detail in the minutes that remain, but I do believe this is probably the single biggest security challenge of our time. And I think we need both the force capability to defeat these people on the ground, and then we need to start rooting out the bad education systems that are educating young people to this radicalism. But, you know, Africa is a place where traditionally, in many, many countries, there have been great relationships between people of different faiths, between Christians and Muslims. And I, for one, believe that the only world that's worth living in is one in which whatever your race or your faith or your culture, people have equal rights, equal respect and tolerance for all.
Ukraine? Should the Americans and the West be arming Ukraine now?
Well, let's see what the outcome of the meetings will be once the German Chancellor speaks with the President of the United States. But look, here's what I think very briefly. I'm not saying that Europe has handled this well in the lead up to the Ukrainian crisis, but the fact is you have a country which is an independent sovereign country on the doorstep of Europe, and it is undergoing a process of destabilization. Now, I agree entirely. There has to be a diplomatic solution to it, but I think that diplomatic solution is most likely to be achieved if there is also a show of strength. So I don't want to come across what is going to be happening in Minsk, I think, tomorrow, but let's hope that it can come to a solution. But in the end, my view is very simple: the Ukrainian people should be able to decide what they do.
And Mr. Cameron, over all of this, has been pretty invisible. I would imagine if you'd still been in number 10, you'd been more seen on the wider scene. Is that fair?
I don't know whether it's fair or not, but it's not very diplomatic. So, look at it. There's a lot going on in the UK right now. Look, for me, just leave aside David Cameron, or we've got an election coming up and everything. I really don't want to get into that. But for me, any country in the world today has to decide where it stands and what its place is. And my view of Britain was always this: Britain's got a great history, but you can't live in your history. So, if you want to exercise influence today, if you're a country the size of Britain, you have to exercise it through alliances. And there are two big alliances for Britain: the United States of America, the European Union. The most powerful country in the world, and the largest political and commercial union in the world. And those are the two pillars, and on those pillars you can build all sorts of relationships. With the new powers, China, India, Brazil, and so on. But I think it's always important to realize that those alliances are at their most determined when there's a crisis and when there's difficult. So, I think it's just important for us right now as a country and as part of Europe and ally of the United States to play our full part. And I'm sure, by the way, the country wants to. It's always difficult for countries in today's world to work out who your ally should be and how you do it. But in my view, standing up for the values that we believe is important.
I think I have one final question, and I'll make it a short answer for you. We talked about Harold Macmillan 50 years ago here in Cape Town. About that same time, I believe your father was working as a teacher in Sierra Leone. At that time, and I've heard you quote this before, Sierra Leone's GDP was about the same as South Korea. And today, obviously, it's not. So in your view, in your opinion, in a short statement, obviously Africa's missed several opportunities. What is the one thing Africa needs to focus on now to change that and attain its true development potential?
Government. Focus on the quality of government. If you get government that is transparent and effective in today's world where capital is mobile, technology is mobile, you can make whatever country you want to make and the future you want to make. And you look around the world today, and the difference between the countries that succeed and the countries that fail is governance, the quality of government. And actually, we just had a classic example in Ukraine. You wouldn't have this problem in Ukraine if in the 20 years since the breakup of the Soviet Union, it had been well governed, with proper effective systems of government and the absence of corruption. So it's the same here in Africa. You govern well, you focus on not on old-fashioned battles of loyalties of the past or colonial past or left-right arguments of the past. You focus on getting the job done, learning the lessons of what makes effective government, and do it honestly, then you'll make your country rule. And that is absolutely possible and can happen if governments are better.
So Peter, can you tell us a bit about your history and your role at the company and the company itself, a bit about some of your solutions?
Okay, just from my side, I've started off doing consulting and mining in early 90s, 91. From there on all the way involved with business consulting, try to get a more effective mining operation going. In '95, we started off doing a consulting company, our own company, away from a UK company, and that led us into the old GMSI. GMSI is Graphic Mining Solutions International. It was owned by Anglo American, the gold division part, and they acquired our consulting company. And GMSI, 13th of March '97 was formed. And from there on, the company transformed. There was a merger of acquisition that happened from Kajima, of the old AST, then Kajima AST, and then Kajima. And about 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, we did a LBO with new partners in MineRP. We also changed the name from GMSI to MineRP. And the new partners in our business is now Corvest, RMB, private equity leg of Rand Merchant Bank, Maso Plattner, Ventures in his personal capacity, so it's nothing to do with SAP, and then management. Within the Corvest environment, we've got a fourth shareholder, Shalamuka. It's our BEE partner, and we are now 100% of it's a private-owned company, but it's 100 of it's a proudly South African company. So that's briefly the history of MineRP. What we do, focus on technology. In the mine technical services environment, where technical systems is very saturated market. There's a lot of applications in that environment. The current count, not 100% sure of that, but it's about 323 different applications supporting mine technical systems environment. And we decided it's an overcrowded environment. We need to move away from that, still supporting the people in that environment, but move to the enterprise side, not to compete with ERPs of the world in the commercial systems, but enable consolidation and collaboration within the mine technical systems environment, and we develop a framework in that space.
Absolutely, you've got a partnership with IBM as well. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, we believe that to develop a solution for mine technical systems environment, there's no company that's big enough in this space that can pull it off. You can only do that with the right partners. And we invested a lot of time and effort through Picker, Potts University and Wits University to ask who's the best people in the analytical optimization environment in the world, in other industries, and that we can bring those products to bear in the mining space. And the answer was IBM. So it's just over a year now that we've got this partnership, where we focus on consolidation on the mine technical data, and then we translate that data in a format that any optimization tool or analytical tools that's the guys use in big data, in the big data environment, can be used to do analysis and optimization. And that's why the partnership with IBM. We're busy with two big projects, prove the concept. Their class just did a presentation also here at the Indaba. We explained some of the results that we've got, but for an underground operation on one shaft to get anything between 5 to 10% improvement on MPV, that's small. And then the tools are also there to control that. So that's what we're doing with IBM.
So you can guarantee companies that 5 to 10% saving as a minimum.
The first step.
And then, so what are the projections going forward then?
This is only focusing on just on the mining side. If you've got a full enterprise optimization, and that's what's nice with IBM is, if you've got a master business schedule where you focus on all the supporting services, supporting the mining industry, if you bring that all into the optimization environment, you will get real results. And we believe that there will be a big change in improvement if you bring focus on that also. So the 5-10% was only focusing on the normal mining stuff, better planning, better spending of your capital, control on the capital side. But it's not optimizing your supply chain, your engineering and all the other supporting services. And as soon as you get that in, you will see a difference, a much bigger difference.
And how easy is it for the user to connect the dots to make that saving?
The challenge for optimization is data and the quality of data. That's always a challenge. And we as MineRP are working in this space for the last 10 years when we start developing our spatial database. And it's only after 10 years and technology that improved that we've got the right tools in that space. So to collect data from all these 323 applications, you're still using the create applications, but get the data in a way it's much easier. Still work that you need to do around that, but it's visible where you need to improve your data. The example that I've got for quite a big platinum producer in South Africa, it was about 4 weeks, 5 weeks, and then you can already see some of the results. And then from there on, it's just ongoing improvement to get a better result out of that. But data is quite critical.
And in terms of health and safety, making the mine a safer place, this obviously ties in quite closely with that.
What's nice with the whole spatial environment, mining is always a black box. You don't always know where the people are operating. Surface is much easier, surface mining, but underground it's quite a challenge. But what's nice with the consolidation and collaboration of your data from all these different applications, bringing it in one area. We've got tools. One of the tools that we've got is Mineforms, using flow-centric in that space, where the system will send SMS or warnings to different people in the organization, making them aware that we are nearing a safety pillar, or you're busy mining in the safety pillar. You're getting closer to a holing area. Be careful for those type of things. So the quality of data that you've got and the visibility of the data in the spatial environment enables you to get much better traction in that space. But within MineRP, we also have got a safety and risk, G-Risk is our application, and one client we've got more than 3,000 users. So we integrate that with the spatial data and get a focus within enterprise-wide risk management. I think the potential for us now, getting consolidation and collaboration with your commercial systems, it's going to help us to get also the financial side for risk in that space better viewed, better focus on that, and I think the results that you're going to get in that space, it's going to be huge, but that still needs to be tested. So. And
energy is another big buzzword at the conference. How is this technology going to help in that regard?
That's why we partner with IBM. IBM's got world-class energy saving tools. On all the optimization tools, they are working all over the world in that space. So what we're doing is bring the mining operations closer to that. So that's something that we will do going forward. We're not going to, from our side, start playing in those optimization things. What's nice is some of the tools that's behind that is what we're also bringing to bear to the mining side, and we know there will be some good benefits that you're going to get from that side. But working closely with them, bring that to the mine technical side is going to enable mining guys to get a better control on that.
There's a mine now almost like a motor car where it has sensors. It'll tell you've got somebody in front of you who's coming close up, and be careful of pedestrian there.
Yeah, well, they've got already that in some of the other areas. That's the easy part that you can get, but you not always know where you're mining. You don't know what's next door. It's just a rock in front of you. You're mining into a safety pillar. What's the impact of your rock engineering? Your stress underground. So all those kind of things are visible, and you know what's happening. In one of the clients, we can see almost weekly what's the stress impact on daily, hourly. The stress impact on the rock in that environment, and it will say this is a dangerous area. Graphically, people must be aware when you enter into those areas. So I think if you want to optimize this environment, you need to focus on the enterprise, not just on thin slices within that environment. We're far beyond that point that to get real revenue benefit out of the solution just to focus on one dimension of that. You need to get the full enterprise view on that. And the risk is one of that.
Absolutely. And can you compare the mine of when you first started working to where we're at now, the sort of the massive changes?
Just if you talk 91, there was almost, I think, 1 or 2 PCs of computers on the mine. All the things were manually. People spent hours just to record some of the things in a visual way on plans. All those things are now immediately available. There were still challenges. If you take in the mining industry, move all these type of things 3D, because a lot of people talk about spatial on surface, but going in 3D, what mining requires and is needed for mining, it's complex data sets, and there was a stage where technology wasn't ready to support that. Where we are now with in-memory databases, we're working very closely with HANA, of SAP, as well as the solutions that we've got in the IBM side, where you can do calculations and bring all these massive data sets together immediately. It's real-time information. So the biggest change is real-time was once a month, 12 times a year. Now it's every second you've got the information available. And I think the industry is struggling to get in step and in pace with where technology is going, and I think that's the opportunity for us to improve this space.
And you guys aren't scared to collaborate with rivals to have a better product?
No, we are working really close with that. What's nice for MineRP is because we are working in this space for more than 10 years, we patented 3 things, and we believe for us, for a small company, that's what we need to protect. It's in global patents, and we know we are protected in that space, but that's a niche area. For us to get the real benefit for those patents, you need to work with big players like the IBMs or the SAPs or General Electrics, all the different companies that's in that space. So we're not afraid to work with that. And on the Create side, there's 91 vendors in the mine technical system side creating these 323. There's a lot of competition with that, but the biggest one in that space is generating about, I don't think they at this stage on $100 million a year on revenue to support companies that's doing 60-70 billion dollars of revenue. It's just not, you can't do that. So you need to do it with the right size of players, people that's got the money to do the R&D and to develop solutions that will solve the problems of the mining industry. So there's no other way. If you think you're going to do it on your own in the difficult market, it's not going to work.
And finally, how much of your products is designed and manufactured in South Africa?
We start off with the bulk of our development in South Africa out of the Anglo-American group. We had a stage development shop in Brisbane as well as in Sudbury in Canada. Good thing of that was get the experience from the international side of the market, not just the tabular ore bodies, a typical South African type of mining. As soon as we've got the knowledge and understanding and good partnerships in the international business, we move that all into one area to develop an enterprise solution. You need to know what the left hand must know what the right hand is doing. Our office is now in Centurion, where we've got 80 software, the technical people, 85 technical people doing the development work. And I'll say all the IP belongs in South Africa. So we are proudly South Africa. We are doing developing solutions for the developing countries. That's the main focus, although we've got a lot of things in Australia and North America. But we are proudly South Africa, and it's all in South Africa.
And would your numbers be able to tell you where the next growth market is going to be in Africa?
Well, if you just take on the reports from PwC, the Lloyds and all those kind of things, exploration, big focus is Africa. If you take what's happening in the commodity market and all those kind of things, that's possible for us to play in that environment. One of our tools that we developed is Due Government, and that's a tool to manage a continent or a country's natural and mining resources. So it's possible for us with the partnership of IBM to print a balance sheet to see what's your status of your mineral resources. Now, it's not just on surface and the lease areas that you manage. It's also to manage the quality of the operations underground. And with that involvement, we're also working closely with the Australian government in tests that we're running in the cloud in Glasterra, the company that we're doing it with. Where you can view the geological information of the country in that environment. So if we do it right, it's going to help us to say where's the best place to invest, where's the opportunities, and working with the right partners in that environment, you will know what's all the other risks that's involved, and that's quite a big risk for developing new operations in different areas. But the tools, you can see what's happening on the ore body. We focus on the ore body.
And if you had to sum up the mineral resources of South Africa on a balance sheet, where should we be in terms of productivity in the world stacks?
The big part of our operations is precious metals, narrow reef tabular ore bodies, different type of operation. And if you take all the CEOs' discussions in that space at the Indaba, they all said that efficiency is a big problem because it's labor intensive, it's conventional mining. They all want to move to mechanized. We are involved with some of them with the new R&D work that they do. It's all mechanized, especially if you go gold, going 3.5 km underground. The conditions is very, very difficult. And I don't think it's human possible to work long hours in that environment. So mechanization will help that. But if you take now on your question, efficiencies is very low. If you take, and it's not just in South Africa, it's all over the globe. If you take, I think some of the reports saying that year on year, there's just over the last 3 years, there's 30-40% year on year that the efficiencies is bad, it's going worse. So in the past, what happened in this space, in a difficult market, the mining companies were easy to increase their efficiencies by just increase their volume. It's not possible anymore. You can't just improve increase your volume to get your efficiencies per ton improved. You need to be more effective on the current ore bodies you mine, and I think that's going to be the challenge globally in this space. So R&D, innovation is a key to get that with good information technology systems.
I've actually been with Bell coming up 25 years. 1st of March will be 25 years, so it's a long haul. 1st of March, 25 years service with the company. Been in the industry about 40 odd years, and I'm the sales and marketing director for Bell in Southern Africa.
Absolutely, and the company's got a real rich history, proudly South African. Can you tell viewers a bit about the history of the company and some of the advancements?
Sure. The company's just celebrated its 60th anniversary, so it's been around a long time. It was started by Irvin Bell, way back all those years ago. Traditionally, we're in the sugar industry. That's how we kicked our business was in the sugar business in Zululand, and then we progressed into the forestry business. It was really only sort of towards the late 80s that we started entering into the quarrying and the surface mining business. And we've grown that side of our business substantially. That's mining and construction now is the biggest markets we compete in. And of course, along with that, we've grown the product range quite dramatically. So we cover the full spread now that services those industries, pretty much door to door.
Well, what is the key differentiator between you and the competition that's put you ahead of the pack?
Yeah, I think we think we are a proudly South African company. Our roots are here. We understand what it takes to build equipment for Africa. African conditions traditionally are pretty hard, severe, and we, with our roots firmly entrenched here, we understand what it has to take to build that equipment. So proudly South African. We're passionate about what we do. We've got good people, and I think that fundamentally, we compete in a very tough market. We compete with all the major global players, and for us to do that, we've got to be as good, if not better. We can't simply be expecting business because we want loyal South Africans to support us. We'd love that, but you've actually got to compete on the world stage with things like safety, environmental issues, productivity, fuel efficiency. So you've got to have the whole package. And for us to compete with the big brand names all over the world, which we do, in Europe, in America, and Asia, we've got to have the full package.
Can you talk about some of the R&D that goes into to your products?
Sure. We spend probably 4% of our revenue on R&D. It's a huge part of our business, and we're forever plowing new machines into the market. As we speak, we've got the Bell B60, which is the world's largest articulated dump truck. It's under prototype testing right now. It's a very interesting concept, and we will want to bring that truck to the market probably this time next year. We've got another year of prototype testing, but it's an articulated 60-ton truck, and it's a 4x4. So it's unlike a 3-axle ADT, it's a 2-axle ADT, but it competes traditionally with the rigid market, but it's 4-wheel drive and it's articulated.
So articulation's always been the cornerstone of your business. That's what kind of put you guys in the map.
Our core product is the articulated dump truck. It remains that way. That's what we build in Richards Bay, and we've now got the world's largest range. We go from an 18-tonner currently up to a 50, but with the advent of the 60, we'll be into the 60-ton market. So that's been the cornerstone of our truck range. But as I say, we have strong alliances now with some major players, being John Deere being one, the Lieber organisation, Finlay, the Finlay crushing and screening equipment out of Ireland, and our other alliance, which has been wonderful, is Bomag out of Germany, which is the compaction range of equipment.
So you've got some really nice partners to do business with.
We have, and we've got strong partners. Our alliance partners are key to our success, and I think we cherish those partnerships because they do give us the spread of equipment.
And can you talk a bit more about your Richards Bay facility and what that produces?
Yeah, Richards Bay is the main manufacturing plant, and they produce fundamentally out of there all the articulated dump trucks. The tractor loader backhoe, the TLB, gets manufactured in Richards Bay, as do a lot of the forestry and sugar products. The tractors, the three-wheelers, the traditional three-wheel product which Bell started with, is still manufactured in large numbers in Richards Bay. All the R&D takes place in Richards Bay, and then over and above that, quite a lot of the components are manufactured in Richards Bay, get shipped across to our assembly plant in Germany, a place called Eisenach, where the trucks for the Northern Hemisphere are assembled. The Eisenach facility is actually an assembly facility, not a manufacturing facility, and it all comes together in Eisenach. A lot of those components actually are built in Richards Bay and then get shipped across.
Presumably the trucks would have different specs for the UK and the African market?
No, we build a truck to one spec, because by doing so we make it pretty well interchangeable.
Very hard then.
Yeah, absolutely. There's certain issues around the engine, Tier 3 and Tier 4 engines, but traditionally the trucks are pretty standard throughout.
Absolutely. And you've also got your new Middelburg facility.
Yeah.
That must be to maintain this big fleet.
Well, Middelburg's a wonderful new facility. As we speak, actually we've just opened up Rustenburg. So we've opened up new branches in the two sweet areas where mining was very bullish in South Africa. Sadly, with the commodity prices where they are, we've seen a tremendous drop-off in the coal market. So that's hurting our new Middelburg facility. And likewise in Rustenburg, with the platinum strike there and the issues around platinum, Rustenburg's taken some heat. But we built these facilities for the long haul. These facilities will see us through for the next 30 or 40 years. They're state-of-the-art facilities. Rustenburg, as we speak, opens now. Earlier last year, we also opened up a new facility in Nelspruit, and as well in January this year, we opened up a facility in Kitwe, and they're all built on the same scale. They're all the same model of facility. And Kitwe is now operational, up and running. So we've had some lovely new customer service centres, and that really is all to support the customer at the end of the day. We want to be close to them, on their doorstep, where they operate, and that's the theory behind that.
Plans for sub-Saharan Africa?
Yeah, we're very active in Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Malawi,
Salisbury,
DRC. So those are bell-owned operations, and the further north we go, we then make use of dealers. So in East and West Africa, typically we've got dealers who represent our product, but in Southern Africa, Sub-Saharan Southern Africa, they're bell-owned operations, like, for example, Bell Mozambique, Bell Zambia, Bell Zimbabwe, fully owned.
And you brought up Striker with your Richards Bay operations affected too?
The strike hurt us last year. There's no question about that. The NUMSA strike had a pretty crippling effect on this economy generally, but it certainly hurt us. Richards Bay manufacturing facility basically came to a halt for that month of July, as did our Johannesburg facility, Jet Park. We were under siege there, and it hurt. It was a crippling strike, and I think it's still, to some extent, the effects of that strike are still being felt.
And to look more positively in the next 12 to 24 months, where are the key growth areas for you guys?
Look, we right now, as we speak, the mining industry is definitely feeling the heat. Commodity prices, particularly things like coal, iron ore, copper, are hurting. We've got the Eskom labour issue, the Eskom power issue, which is put a bit of a damper on things. I think you can even feel it at this Mining Indaba. And then throw in the labour issue. So there are a couple of key issues that we need to deal with in this country in terms of mining to get it up and running at full speed again. I think it will. I don't think it's going to be in the short term. I think we're in for a tough 2015. But these commodities do have a cyclical nature, and they will come out of it, and with that mining will come out of it. But so for the next 18 to 24 months, I believe it's a question of battening down the hatches. We've got all our facilities in place now, Middelburg, Rustenburg, Kitwe. So growth areas we don't see. We'd love to see just some stability in our.
There's more consolidation.
Consolidation. It's a period of bedding things down. We've got the products, we've got the people, we've got the facilities. We now need to see some of the macroeconomic issues, as I say, like commodity prices, like the Eskom issue, like labour. If we can get this country can get their hand on those major issues. We're optimistic. We think there's huge, and particularly in the whole of Africa. This continent's full of wonderful commodities and resources, and we're here to capitalise on it in the long term. But it's and there's one thing about the early equipment business. You're in it for the long haul, and it's not a short-term win-gain situation. You've got to be in it for the long haul, and you've got to ride out. You've got to be prepared to ride out the storm, as it were.
And exports, so how much of your product do you export?
South Africa still is our major market, but having said that, if you look at the group revenue, total revenue for last year, for example, South Africa represented about 45% of group revenue, and 55% would be for the rest of the world. But South Africa is still a hugely important market. But yeah, exports are critical for us, and we export all over the world, literally from in all 5 continents. We have a presence in some particularly strong markets for us.
And your impressions of the Indaba this year?
As I said, funny enough, I've been at every single 21 of these Indabas. I came in 21 years ago, whatever that was, 1994, I think it would have been. Yeah, it was at the Cape Sun Hotel.
And you had to queue to get up there.
Correct, and I think there were probably 200 delegates. So there's been massive growth in this Indaba, but I would say the mood here this year isn't as bullish as it's been in the past. I don't think there is many people. I think it's still very well attended, clearly, but I think people are cautious. I don't see it as a bullish mood, but also people understand that they also got to ride out the storm a little bit and wait for things to pick up. But overall, good to see a lot of our customers here. I think we could do with a few new interesting projects. That's, I think, the thing that's lacking most is new projects in South Africa, particularly mining projects. Yeah, I think I've certainly seen it more bullish and people more optimistic than they have been this year.
And the electricity energy crisis, what do you think it's going to take to turn that thing around?
Greg, I wish I had the answer for that, but I do think that we need to come up with a more sustainable plan. You know, I don't think load shedding every day is the answer. I think if they've got a maintenance, if Epsom have got a maintenance issue, I'd like to see them come out and say, right, we've got a load shed for 16 hours a day for the next month, but in that month we are going to fix the problems. We're going to get the maintenance done, we're going to get the generators up and running, and if we're going to take real pain for a month, I'd rather we have that than this on off for the next 5 years, because that does no one. I really think they need to come up with a plan where they say month, 2 months, 3 months even. You're in it. It's going to be painful, but when you come out of that, we're going to be free. And I think that's what I'd like to see.
Doesn't seem to be a plan.
There seems to be a lack of a plan. That's the concern I think that most South Africans have is, what is the plan? And if there is a plan, then communicate it to us. Tell us what the plan is, because right now I don't think anyone really knows what the plan is.
And looking back over the rich history of Bell, what would you highlight as the major, the pinnacle, the cherry on the top?
For me, I just think being with an organisation that I think has certainly started off as a very humble little family business 60 years ago to come to a point where we are regarded as a global player right across the world stage. I've been very privileged to be part of that for 25 years. I've seen enormous growth. So for me, I think it's been the journey. It's been an incredible journey, as I say, from even when I joined in 1990, a very humble little organisation, fiddling around here and there. Today we're a pretty decent sized player. So I think the overall growth we've achieved, the alliance partners we've been able to secure, and the footprint we've made, particularly on the African continent, I think is probably the highlight for me.
Can you put a number on your turnover annually?
This past year, it's going to be in the order of, let me get it right, total group turnover would be in the order of about 6 billion rand.
And in terms of, do you guys design your own engines as well?
No, we use the Mercedes-Benz engines pretty much, and the John Deere engines. Our truck range is the Mercedes-Benz engine, but some of the other products have John Deere engines. We still use the Deutz engine in some of our smaller products. So we don't manufacture our own large components like engines and transmissions, but we manufacture our own axles, we manufacture our own cylinders, we manufacture our own cabs, bins, so there's a huge amount of local content that goes in, but the engine and transmission, and for obvious reasons the tyres, the radial tyres, are all fully imported still.
And the level of skill within South Africa to put those pieces together?
Yeah, I mean we've got a very competent R&D team, as I say, mechanical engineers, and yeah, we do a lot of in-house training, things like welding. A lot of in-house welding, because clearly that's a key component of manufacturing. Heavy weld is one of our core competencies, heavy weld. But you know, you can't ever do enough training. We do technical training, we do artisan training. So we have a very successful accredited training facility in Richards Bay, which is much needed today, because sadly we've seen a tremendous decline in the level of technical training that's out there. You know, the old technicons.
The apprenticeships are gone.
Exactly. The old technicons seem to be no more. And so we train over 100 apprentices a year through our training facility in Richards Bay, and that's a huge value add.
So you say are you one of the companies that are doing the most in terms of upskilling?
In our business, absolutely. There's no one who equals what we do in terms of technical training.
What have been some of the success stories? You've taken a guy from grassroots and taken him through the ranks.
Yeah, we've seen some of our young guys come through in the organisation, start off and come through into senior managerial roles in the technical side, either it be in the aftermarket or indeed at the factory. So that's very pleasing to see some of the growth in-house that we've been able to develop.
And the relationship with John Deere finally must be give and take. You must learn a lot from each other.
Yeah. John Deere is a world-class, massive organisation. It's an icon American company, and we have learnt a lot from them. I think they've learnt from us as well. but you know, they have wonderful systems. They've got some wonderful products, and they've been a very good partner for us for, I think we came on board in 1996, so it's nearly 20 years we've had that partnership. They're still a major shareholder in the organisation, and we've grown and learnt a lot from John Deere, and I think that partnership's going to go from strength to strength.
Your impressions of the Indaba thus far?
I think there's a tempering of expectations. People are becoming used to the idea that this commodity prices are not going to go back anytime soon. I think that message is coming. And the other thing that's coming through to me is that mining companies have got to realize that they've got to invest in the good times. They've got to invest for the future, in technology, education, those kind of things. And this short-term approach to the mining industry has got to change. We've got to have long-term approach.
Absolutely, and talking about sustainability, mine closure is also another big factor. How as a consultant do you encourage companies to start planning for a closure before they even open the mine?
Yeah, well, in hard or tough economic times, it's very difficult, to get people to start investing for when they actually close the mine. So it's difficult, but it gets back to these, another theme that's coming to it, partnerships. Governments, stakeholders, and mining companies have got to have a collaborative approach to that, and for the benefit of everybody. When the mine's closed, what's going to be left for the communities?
So you say mining needs to take a more holistic approach and not just focus on the commodity itself. And the coal price, it's been slightly fluctuating. Where do you think that'll settle down at?
The coal?
Yeah.
I mean, coal in this country, well, in most countries, it's in dire straits. Particularly in this country, and we are about to start exploiting a new coal field, which is more geologically complex. Costs are going to go up. We've got issues with supply to our national electricity regulator. They've got these new power stations coming on stream. They're going to need coal from those coal fields. At the same time, we're looking for exports. So it's a difficult space right now in South Africa for coal companies.
I suppose then it's difficult to suddenly ramp up production when the demand increases.
Well, that's the thing, and it gets back to the short-term thing. When you're in the good times, which we've had, that's when you've got to invest, so that when the bad times come, you can see yourself through.
And do you see light at the end of the tunnel for the mining industry in sub-Saharan Africa?
Well, there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. You've just got to be hopeful that it isn't a locomotive coming down.
Speaking of lights, what do you think the best strategy to satisfy our hunger for electricity going forward, especially in the mining industry?
Well, I think the emphasis on criticism of Eskom has been a bit overdone, and I think we should look at it on a holistic basis. Look at the long term. Look what we're going to do. If you look at in Europe, the United States, the cheapest way of providing electricity is energy efficiency. Using the energy which you've got efficiently. And we haven't seen any of that here. We did have with, we got rebates when we put in solar energy to our houses for the water. So we got a rebate there. But, the whole thing of energy efficiency has to be addressed, should be addressed in South Africa. using of low voltage technology and things with solar technology, renewables, all that should be on the table. And we're rather concentrating on criticising Eskom for what is a problem that isn't going to go away by with all the criticism that we're giving them. So
do you see a time when business takes care of their own electricity and doesn't rely on Eskom and takes almost a leading role in that?
That should be developed as well, an integrated approach. When you're doing mining projects in Africa, provision of energy is a critical issue. And there's companies here from Europe which are looking to be part of that solution. And rural communities. You can harness the new technology, solar energy, wind energy, for the benefit of local communities and for the mines that are there.
Gas seems to be a possible alternative to solve this problem. How feasible do you think it is long term, and with the shale debate, would that solve some of the problems?
Well, the shale debate in South Africa is still open, it's open for discussion. And the way they're going now, we're not going to see any progress in the next 10 years. I can't see. But what we need to do, and I was at a forum yesterday where they were discussing, they're going to, I think the World Wildlife Foundation is going to publish a report on economics of shale gas in South Africa. And I think that's something that needs to be done, because we keep comparing with the United States. The United States, the mineral right situation is different. Individuals can own the surface rights. They've got a big framework, a pipeline framework, which we haven't got in the Karoo. So it's a different ballgame. We need to explore, and we need to see how much gas is there, shale gas is there, and then we need to put a feasibility study together with the oil companies, and then we need to take it forward. Because there is benefit. But what we're doing now is we're all getting excited about the damage to the environment and damage to the water resources. And we haven't a clue what the amounts that are there, whether it's feasible to extract it.
SRK is all about sustainability. How sustainable has the American fracking industry been over? They've been going for 30 years, haven't they?
Yeah, but it's been a game changer in the United States. They've become they have become energy self-sufficient in energy. So it's been a game changer in the United States. But as I said to you, whether that model can work here in South Africa, we don't know. It's a different place, a different ballgame.
And how would that change the face of Southern Africa if we could be energy self-supporting?
Well, we talk about economic growth. The one thing you need for economic growth is energy. So, Barack Obama, when he visited here in, what was it, last year, that was the one thing that he emphasized, is you've got to have energy, you've got to have power, electrical power in the African continent. Otherwise, where will you get the economic growth?
And going forward, this talk of eight nuclear power stations seems very unrealistic. Realistically, how can we do that in the next 10 years, get to a stage where we can push that?
Well, I believe that nuclear power, my personal opinion, nuclear power is the way to go. It's a lot safer, believe it or not, than coal, fossil fuel power stations, and it's costly, so they say. But we need to make those long-term decisions. We've been in the nuclear power business here in Cape Town, Cuba, for the last 30 years. So it's nothing new to South Africa. But we need to make those long-term decisions, and we need to move with it.
Absolutely. And as we move further and further towards mechanisation, how can we make that process smoother? Because the unions obviously are going to be against it.
Well, this is the dilemma, isn't it? You know, and we've heard that with the Indaba. All these companies are looking to technology, they're looking to mechanization, they're going to do more with less people. Now that is a problem for the African continent because we already have a high unemployment rate and an unskilled workforce. So we've got to marry those two things together. It's all right talking about productivity improvements through mechanization. What is going to happen to the workforce and the unemployed? That we've got to sort out. And again, it comes back to partnerships between government, mining companies, and other stakeholders.
Graham Trussler from Digby Wells Environmental, and yeah, we like supporting the Indaba just to meet our clients, get around and speak to people, see what projects are happening. And it is always fun to be in Cape Town, and hopefully we can generate some business. We also combine this with a bit of education on environmental and social issues, and we've just had a very successful sustainability breakfast. A lot of mining companies discussing how they're dealing with environmental issues throughout Africa.
So, and mine closure seems to be the big buzzword this morning. How should companies really be gearing up for mine closures before it's too late?
Well, the mine closure traditionally has been a real discussion on what do you do with the pit and the shafts and the tailings dams. So it's so much more than that, and social issues are now dominating. And the mining companies should be gearing up with talking to their communities, who's around them, what should the area look like after closure. Sometimes there shouldn't be development projects, sometimes there should be near the mine, but I think dialogue and planning is what's needed.
And how best to get that key balance between profitability and looking after Mother Nature for long-term sustainability?
Well, we don't see it as mutually exclusive. If you don't look after Mother Nature, you're not going to have a sustainable industry, you're not going to get community or government support. So it's part of the normal business is to ensure that there's a balance between the benefits going to shareholders, to the local community and to the government, who should be providing an enabling framework so that you could do your business.
And you talk about government support. What sort of relationship do you have with government, and how best to foster sort of tangible relationships?
I think dialogue is obviously one. Also the money goes where the government support the mining projects. So we've seen that tremendous influence on the projects we work in jurisdictions where people are trying to encourage development, encourage mining companies to come in. The money does flow there. If people are making it difficult to invest or don't want investors, the money won't go there.
And the need for the need and the key of proper planning, proper cartography. What sort of new technology has really aided in this regard?
Well, we obviously electronic communications has helped. A lot of places we go now has cell phone coverage, which they never had before. So communities have much more access to information. We're using a lot more GIS ways of doing things, covering large areas, mapping. And we're also trying to combine with what the companies are doing on the exploration front, with what we're doing on a social or environmental front. So you just fly the area once, map it properly, and use the geology to do your mine planning properly.
And the key growth areas you can envision in the next 5 years. Congo seems to be a big buzzword, a lot going on there.
I think the Congo is going to do very well. I also think as the Ebola crisis gets sorted out, a lot of the West African growth is going to happen. Liberia is going to carry on with a growth trajectory. Guinea, hopefully with political stability and certainty, will be a good place to invest in. Those poor countries have been hit strongly with Ebola. Yeah, the Congo is working well. I think Angola has huge potential, but difficult to do business.
And when you're going in there to do business, what are the keys to sort of making friendly relationships with the locals to make the process go streamlined?
Well, the first thing is to realize that you're a guest in their country, and we go in not knowing it all, but we try and forge local partnerships, get local employees, speak to local communities. So we cannot come in as a foreign company to work there. We've got to do it in collaboration with local consultancies, local communities.
And there's a lot of talk about mechanization. Do you think in the next 10 to 20 years' time there'll be a lot more operator-driven and less rank and file?
Definitely. I think the rise of unionism and increasing wages has been good in some respects. The others, there have been a lot of job losses. So I think people will be more highly trained in the mines. But the benefits then for the communities will have to come from secondary businesses, spin-off businesses.
And as we look forward to 2015, what do you think the big talking points are going to be as we go forward and opportunities?
I think 2015 is going to be focused on commodity prices. I think the low prices are going to get reflected in some projects being pulled in areas. I think uranium is low, iron ore is low, so those projects will battle to continue. I think gold price is still good, and the decreasing oil price is going to decrease energy costs, so a lot of projects which are energy intensive might now go ahead.
And platinum, are we going to see a stabilization there?
I think people in the platinum industry are going to work together a lot more, be it South Africa or Zimbabwe. I think there's a realization that it's got to be a group solving the problem, not individual companies.
What happened was I was in Australia, UNSW 2009. I'm part of the Society of Mining Professors all over the world, and I went into their center in Sydney, and I was so amazed by what they have in the sense of this 10-meter diameter cylinder. It's got 4.5 meter high walls, it's got 5 projectors, it's immersive technology. You put on 3D glasses and you're right in the mine, you know. And the thing that struck me, they put us through a fall of ground exercise. My goodness, you've got no idea how much the people around me got affected by the fact that they experienced the fall of ground and no one got hurt. Because the surround sound around it, the whole issue of the effect of the visuals and so forth. I mean, everybody, when they walked out of there, they said, no, my goodness, this is something special. You know? So I came back to South Africa after that visit. And the University of Pretoria Mining School, we've got a very, very active mining advisory board, and we also have a very strong alumni. But at the first mining advisory board, Chris Griffiths then was then the CEO of Kumba. So he sits on my advisory board, and I do this nice presentation, everything, and I say to the guys, yes, I saw something spectacular. What is it? Show them a nice video of this facility, and I said to them, we must have something like this. And then I made the comment, I said, you know what, but it's so damn expensive, I don't think anyone would be interested or keen at this. And it was just at that credit crunch that we had, you know. And as I stopped, Chris Griffiths, who was then the CEO of Kumba, said, well, you haven't asked me yet. Yes, I saw this door just open, you know, because then I knew this is an opportunity. So I sent him a proposal, but you know, the proposal was basically a dream of what we want to do, and we gave him an estimate of the costs and so forth, because I just phoned the Aussies and said, listen, tell me how much and how far can we go with this. And I think it was about 6 months after that, the concept of budget approval was done. And I think a year later we got all the money, and it was an amount of 18.8 million rand to set up that facility. But then we found out we don't have a place to put it. That's really living your dream, you know. Anyway, so the university came to the party and they said, but wait a minute, let's put it on the roof of one of our current mineral sciences buildings. And then the dean had a vision of, but why don't we take the whole floor then and make it a new mining department? And true as hell. What then happened was, over a period of 3 years now, I think 4 years, where we started the planning of the whole floor, the whole new mining department, new research institute, everything, to form part of this virtual reality center. And what was so nice, what's his name, Chris Griffiths, when he gave us the money, he said, I don't want a movie house. It must be a design center where we could improve surface mines at that point in time to be more productive, more optimized, more safe, more healthier. How can we use virtual reality? So what we then did subsequent to that, we started looking at what are other people doing about optimization and about safety and all of that. And we came to the point where we realized that if we have the design tools, you know, whether it's a scheduler or an optimizer or whatever, if you could integrate all of that into a visual environment and then turn that into an immersive environment, can you imagine the power of how the effect that you could get from that? So what we then did, we designed a complete new laboratory for mining, a mine design laboratory. We then did the what we call the 3D stereoscopic theater, like a typical cinema with the 3D glasses on. And then the third component was then, if you were doing this overview of the mine, and you then wanted to go into the stope or into the development, you would then go out of that into this immersive environment where you could physically move into the rock and see the jewelry coming towards you in the rock type of environment, and sort of do a lot of strata control issues and all of those things. So what was nice about the idea then was mining companies would be in a position now, and we've actually just set up a virtual reality mine design team, where they could actually bring their data, their log data, their borehole data, whatever they make, even from scratch, give it to us, we put it in a program, and we visualize whatever we have, and then we bring in the design team, and they would then convert the design into a visual environment. And if you really wanted to go to the nitty-gritty of in the face, you could go into the immersive environment. And at first we thought it was not going to be possible, or it would be quite difficult, and I think it's still a challenge, and that's why Australia has done a lot of good work on surface mines, but the underground mines have not been exploited as much, I think. So what we're doing now is we're getting people on board now. Several companies have approached us that wanted to go ahead now by visualizing, optimizing tools, so you have almost a split screen environment, where on the right hand side, and I'm talking about the theater complex now, you have all your input data, and on the left hand side you've got your visualization, where you can actually see how your data actually influences the run of the mine. And I think that's sort of the real reason why we wanted to go ahead with this, so that you could see the consequence of poor designs. Immediately shows you, because it's linked to mathematics. It's linked to the intelligence component of a design. So it's not just a visualization anymore. It's really the mathematics behind that sort of triggers the visuals. And I think that's where we want to go with all of this. And this is now for rock engineering, vent engineering, all the issues that we always had battles and problems with. I think we're at a point now where we will be able to start doing a lot of good work, I think, where people would benefit, not just from a safety and health, but from a cost perspective, from a return on investment perspective. I just think, to see your mine crash in video or in a simulation better than to see it crash in 20 years' time, And I think that was sort of where we're going with all of this. And like I said, our official launch is on the 4th of August. We've invited the Minister now, Advocate Ramatlodi, because we said this is unique. It's the first in Africa, and what we also have, it's unique in the context that it can be actually used by all countries north in Africa and make use of that facility. But like I said, we just touched the tip of the iceberg.
And how user-friendly is it for people to interact with?
What we've also said is the success would be, which you must remember, we're going to have an education component and a training component. And then with that is education in mine design, training in mine design. There's education and hazard awareness, there's training and hazard awareness. So there's a training and an education component. Now, because it's never been done on such a large scale, we're now learning as we go along. But what we've already decided is that what we're going to do is we're going to take, for instance, a tablet environment. You can only put 15 people in that immersive environment. So you take tablets, you give every student a tablet, and let's say you're busy with the hazard awareness program, the lecturer or the person in charge of the training, he could simulate a certain scenario, and the students must answer on the tablets. And the nice thing about it, you can then have a consequence of whatever they have cumulatively done wrong. Or you can do it in a way where the person that's really not knowing what's going on, that you can show what your consequence would have been if you had that design. So in terms of your question, we're not quite sure how easy or how difficult this interface will be. But Australians have already started doing it. They've been using it for quite a while in their education for mining subjects. So what we've got now with UNSW is we know the group of people there quite well, and we've got this arrangement now. They're coming to us in Australia and South Africa in July, and we will share programs. So we will develop new ones and share it with them, and they'll develop new ones, or we'll use theirs. And I think that's going to make it quite a nice project, because we don't have to redesign the wheel in terms of what they've done. And I think we've got some very good ideas which I think they haven't done, which I think we've already implemented now from our perspective. So yeah, it's exciting times. And yes, I think it's one of those innovations that when we really put it on the table 4 years ago, I didn't at that point in time realize the impact that it potentially could have in terms of safety and health. And for me to be part of that, oh my goodness, it's exciting, it's innovative, and it's really something that people could look up to eventually.
And as a professor, how does that change the way you approach your job?
Very much so, in the sense that mining is one of the most difficult disciplines to actually visualize. If you talk to a student about a stope and a raise and a winds and a swizzer, they don't have an idea what you're talking about. Now we have the facility that instead of taking on the ground on a mine, we do the lecture, and the next period we take him into the immersive environment. So, okay, this is what the mine looks like. But it will never replace hands-on mining visits and going underground and really get the feel for it. But at least, you know, in doing that in a 3D environment, you could tilt that thing as much as you want, and you can show them where they would be walking and stuff like that. So from an education perspective, it enhances our ability to make very technical and very difficult scenarios very visual. And that's what we are so excited. You know, to answer your question further, we've actually gone further now, that in our second year, we're now introducing a subject for our mining students, which we call virtual reality applications in the mining industry, which means that we've now designed a surface mine, an underground coal mine, hard rock mine, platinum, gold, and even a massive mine, you know, the basics of it. So that you take them in there and say, now you come from outside, you zoom into the mine, and then you go into the tunnels, and they can physically see what this mine looks like, you know. And so that's already almost done, and that we will be introducing in the second semester with our students. Do you know who's more excited about this? Our students. They cannot wait for this. Go sit in a theater and see a mine, you know. And what I said to my staff, just make sure that they still understand the reality of mining. Mining is not this nice visuals and everything, you know, it's tough out there. But I think the fact that we're in a position where we could educate them better, I think that's the nice part about it.
Are these sort of things making mining more attractive?
I'm almost convinced that it will. And then you're sitting with the challenge that you still have to get the right people to do the mining. Otherwise, you know, because I tell you now, we from a mining or a mining discipline perspective, we get so many applications. You know, Wits University and ourselves are of the biggest English-speaking mining schools in the world now. I mean, I've got 400 plus students. Wits has got 700 plus students. We received 1,018 applicants for mining engineering last year for this year, of which 150 were approved because they qualified, and I think only 70 then arrived eventually. And I think the similar numbers is applicable to Wits. So it's literally a 10% success figure in terms of who applies and who then gets selected. And then I think our attrition at this stage, you know, the number of people that we keep is around about 60%. You know, so from that perspective, we don't lose as many as we had in the past. And I'm convinced that from making mining more sexy. You know, mining is not a sexy career. You know. And the fact that we get so many applicants, I think is sometimes for the wrong reason. It's for money, it's job security in a big way, because mining is going to be in South Africa for a long time. We're not going to get rid of mining in South Africa, not in you and my lifetime. So there's a keen interest in it, and the fact that we want to try and convert this harsh mining sort of vision into a more technical environment where you could design in a visual environment and do a lot of these. And the reason why I'm saying that is the kids of today, they love their iPads, they love their tablets, they love their cell phones, and I mean, they're in touch with the world, you know. And if we could get that excitement from a mining perspective also going with them, I mean, can you just imagine where we can go with this?
And in terms of your intake, is there a nice cross-section demographic?
Oh yeah, I think I'm very excited about this one as well. You know, University of Pretoria, when I became head of department in 2007, I think we were just over 200 students, of which half white, half black. We're now 80%, 78% black students, white students 22% obviously, and we've got 29% ladies in the mining department that pursue mining now as a career. And it had a lot to do with the mining charter, you know, had to readdress the imbalances and stuff like that, and I'm fully for that. We made a very good strategic decision in 2000 that we changed our mining discipline on Takis to English only. So, and that immediately opened the door to African students, people from South Africa, black students specifically, and at this stage about 10% of my students are from Africa. You know, from the Malis and the DRCs of the world, you know, Zimbabwe and Botswana, which is actually quite nice because you have that international mix. And a lot of students from Namibia as well, you know, and that would not have happened if we were still Afrikaans. Would never have happened. From an historical perspective, if you look at the mining industry now, we've got Conficon here, we've got Chris Griffiths, we've got big names that it's been coming through the system. But in the last 10 years, what I'm so excited about is that our top 10 in the classroom has now become a split between black and white students. So it's no more a race thing, you know, it's a quality of education that has been maintained, and we're in a position now that, like for instance, our top student from last year, he's a cum laude student. He's a student from Namibia, you know, and for me, you know, that was, wow, you know, this is one of those, guy gets him from Africa and you make him the top South African student in the university context. Tony Kakana, for instance, one of my postgraduate students, he's been in Impala now. He's finished his honours degree in mining, you know. So those are the type of success stories that we currently have. We've got a French-speaking student, Jean-Paul, you know, that is Kayamba, you know. Top student, top 3 in the class, you know, comes from Mali, you know. And that to me is the success stories, that it's not just South African students that's been excelling in our department, it's also students from Africa. But if I look at from an Anglo-American perspective, from Sibanye, from Goldfields, the quality of the graduates that they also sort of get bursaries for, and then, you know, we educate them and then they go back to the mines. I think that's what makes my job so nice, is to see that you're actually educating the next generation of mining engineers. And having the virtual reality will enhance that even to the next extent, I think, because it's something that they're acquainted with. I mean, they live with it every day. And like I said to you, the most exciting portion of what we're busy is the students. They are so excited about going ahead with this whole thing.
And what might the mine of 2035 look like from an engineering perspective with all these developments?
I think, to answer your question, at Wits University they're busy with a project what they call Digital Mine, which relates to real-time monitoring using digital technology in the underground environment, so as to optimize your whole approach to your mining cycle. Now, what I think what's going to happen now is that digital mine and also the virtual mine and all of those are eventually going to go into a marriage where you would literally have your whole mine virtual and digitally linked, so that you could actually on a real-time basis make changes and sort of, I think we're going to go way past this 5-year plan and 2-year plan. I think we're going to go 30-day plans, you know, and things like that, because the technology and the whole approach to design will be so dynamic that you'll be able to change it immediately. But you would be in a planning position before to visualize the consequences, so that you could be in a position where you are quite sure about what you're busy doing, because you've actually implied the whole mathematics behind your visualization.
And with deep mining, how do you get those visuals way 2K down, you know, to be able to project your virtual reality?
You see, that's the nice thing about virtual, is when we started talking to Anglo-American about what they've done, there's a guy at Anglo, Dave Drinkwater, that he was very much involved in implementing the whole virtual reality approach to planning in Anglo-American. That was sort of parallel to the time that we got the money and the facility that we would like to have. When I spoke to Dave about, when was it, about a month ago when he was visiting us, we were talking about, when you go deeper and deeper and the technology is more and more available to look at what your geology looks like, you know, what are the, and everything that you need to actually enhance your mine design because of so much information available. Now in the past, you had all this information, you didn't know what to do with it. Now you have all the information, you can put it in a program and you can visualize whatever you want to do. And then the other
so that's the good thing, you don't actually have to have a camera there to make it happen.
Exactly. And then the other thing, what's happened, scanning technology is now really world class. I mean, they fly a drone over an open pit mine in a week type of environment, a week or 2 weeks, and they would visualize that whole pit, you know, in terms of 1 millimeter accuracy, you know. And if you think about that, can you now imagine you've got this drone that could fly over that mine every month? How it will pick up all changes with regard to slope stability, failure potential, all of those things you could pick up and you could build that into your programs. Where in the past, you know, to have measured that would have taken you a few days just to get one part of the pit sort of plotted out. But now you have that. You know, when I spoke to the scanning guys, they said to me, don't you want to use a drone to fly through your new building and show the world what it looks like? I said, how long will it take? 3 hours? And then we've got your whole department on, and you can imagine, I said, when do you do it? Yeah. So I think if we're in a position where we could integrate all the latest technologies, because I think that's the challenge. And I think the nice thing about it is that the university is now involved with us. And we've put together now a design team to look at the future of this, because we believe that innovation should start with universities. If universities are not doing it, who the hell are going to do it? You know? So from our perspective, we don't know all the answers, but I think we've got enough resources available, you know, to experiment and to put new things on the table and get things going in a big way. But I think from my perspective, I've seen it that the minute you give this young generation this visual challenge, you know, how to convert this information into something tangible, meaning seen, they love it. And they really want to make mining a more sexier environment. And I fully support them on that, because like I said, you know, taking mining 100 years in South Africa, we have a bit of an issue of making it sexy. I mean, if you just look at the people that are against mining in South Africa, yes, there's a lot of people that did wrong things, but there's a lot of good things as well. And unfortunately, the newspapers only focus on the bad things. And then I think Marco Tifani said, we either grow it or we mine it in South Africa. You know? And we must live by that credo that if we don't have mining, we have absolutely a disastrous economy waiting for us. And I think this Mining Indaba proves that, you know, that there's so much interest now just with the energy thing now. How will this lack of electricity, how will that influence mining output and production and so forth? And I think universities, there's another opportunity now, you know, to see how can we be involved in a strategy where this blackouts or this load shedding shouldn't be such an issue if it's done in a real structured way.